fuck did I get in? It's so deep I can't swim. On my Halloween shit, cut the lights off in your crib, and I'm sipping dirty like Flint. This that thrash back, not me.
Recently, there's been a massive shift in the whole rap group, rap collective idea. Whether it be related to various current events going on in the world, or if it's related to own disputes within rap communities. There have been multiple rap groups and collectives that have actually started to split up. But the biggest question is, why are these groups that we all thought were really great groups together suddenly splitting up and no longer existing? First, at the end of last year, we actually had Chris Travis actually go and leave Seshollowaterboyz. That rap collective, originally founded by Bones, who is probably one of the biggest underground rappers. Now, I know that sounds really weird to say, but if you take a look at a lot of underground rappers, kind of put them all together in one massive category, Bones just happens to be one of the longest lasting, most popular underground rappers that exists. With that group starting well back in 2014, kind of right around the time that underground rap really started to kind of pique the interest of a well larger audience. And despite 5 years of all of these rappers, artists kind of working together, I feel like they finally got to that point where there was maybe a little bit of dispute between each other, and they kind of had to start disbanding the group a little bit. Now, if you know anything about any of the guys in that group, it is very hard to find much information on them, since for whatever reason, a lot of them really don't like to do interviews. In fact, Bones himself never went on No Jumper, despite Adam 22 kind of pressuring him to try and get an interview with him. The second group to start making some major changes was actually the YBN collective. The three most notable people in the YBN collective were Namir, Cordae, and Almighty J. Now, there are more members that were part of the YBN collective. However, the rest of them honestly never kind of went really that far. Now, all of the guys that were part of the YBN collective, while they were a group, they weren't really a group. These guys didn't grow up together, they didn't live similar lives, they didn't even live in a lot of the same cities or even towns or states. They actually formed this collective together because they were all friends on GTA. Now, Namir kind of started to really pop off a couple of years ago with his songs like Rubbing Off the Paint, Smoking Dang, got a Uzi in my lap, I let it bang. Bounce Out With That, Fucking hit me, total automatic, so I passed my little bro to send me, and No Relations.
Ay, I say I only want one night, but I ain't gonna spend the night. I ain't looking for relations, I'm just giving.
Now, I know that he had songs before that, but at least to me, those are kind of the few songs that really started to push Namir's career really forward. And then around the time that Namir kind of started to grow, Cordae kind of followed after with him. And then toward the end of 2018, we see Namir, Cordae, and Almighty J make this YBN mixtape together. While there were quite a few songs on that I thought were actually phenomenal songs, as a whole, the mixtape wasn't anything super special. And even though all of these guys were part of this group, or they were supposed to be part of this like really tight niche collective, they really weren't. They all made this mixtape together, but for the most part, they were pretty much all independent artists. And then in 2019, Cordae released his album, The Lost Boy, and throughout that year, Namir didn't really release anything notable at all. So while Namir helped Cordae kind of grow, Cordae pretty quickly passed Namir in his whole fan base. And so far in 2020, Namir still hasn't released anything really notable. And even though Cordae hasn't released a lot of music this year, he's still continued to grow really rapidly. And then fairly recently, we find out that Cordae is no longer a part of the YBN collective. But if you really take the time to think about it, the chances that YBN would have continued to grow for years and years and years is kind of unlikely, especially because these guys were only really friends with each other online before they started rapping. For YBN specifically, it actually kind of makes sense for me for them to kind of separate and do their own thing, especially with how much Cordae has grown. It's probably in his best interest to kind of start growing significantly more into his own person and kind of create a bigger wave for himself than he has already. And then there was news that came out less than a week ago about ASAP Ferg no longer being part of ASAP Mob. Now, whether or not Ferg is part of ASAP anymore or not, it's kind of iffy. It depends on who you ask in ASAP Mob. Now, about a week ago, Complex actually went and reported on this, saying that earlier this week, co-founder ASAP Ills said Ferg was no longer part of the collective, adding in his opinion that Ferg's recent output included songs that were, again, in his opinion, dumb trash. ASAP A$AP Bari, who pleaded guilty to a count of sexual assault in London last year, seemed to back up this claim, though some subsequent messages from Nast tell a different story. As Nast explained late Tuesday, disputes are common in families all over the world. Ferg, however, was not and will not be kicked out of A$AP Mob. Any such claim, Nast added, is simply false. Kind of what I got out of this whole A$AP situation is that A$AP Ills and A$AP Ferg maybe got into a fight with one another, and maybe kind of in the heat of the moment, A$AP Ills, being one of the founders of the A$AP Mob, came out and said, you know what, Ferg, you are no longer part of the A$AP Mob. But whether or not A$AP Ferg is really a part of A$AP Mob anymore, which I feel like at least for now he still is, it kind of brings to question the whole point of these guys being in these rap collectives together, and if these guys actually get any value out of this after being in these groups for such an extended period of time. It makes sense in the beginning for rappers to kind of form collectives together to kind of help each other grow, share their audiences with one another, projects together, work with each other with each other's help. But there reaches a point where you kind of start to question, is this actually beneficial for each individual rapper and artist? Especially after years and years and years of these guys being together in these collectives, especially after seeing a lot of these guys go from being pretty much unknown to growing their rap careers significantly to then over time maybe starting to fall off a little bit, especially because after a while a lot of rappers kind of stop making good music. Now, while OG fans might listen to every single song they make that's new and be like, oh, this is the best song they've released yet, but if you take a look at streams, album sales, and new releases that they're putting out and compare the numbers of their new songs to their old songs, you'll notice that a lot of these rappers kind of start to fall off over time, or they're just not growing as rapidly as they once were. And when any of the rappers in any of these groups I've mentioned continue to grow their careers, continue to make better and better music, while other members of the group have started to fall off, for the members of these groups who are starting to make significantly better music over time, it's not really worth it to them as much to be part of these rap collectives, because it's not always necessarily the best idea for these artists who have started to grow significantly to still be associated with rappers who have unfortunately started to fall off. Now, with the A$AP Mob specifically, I don't think that they will be fully disbanded anytime soon. With Seshollowaterboyz, I honestly think it's almost time for them to kind of start separating at least a little bit. They can still make music together, but for them to be one collective, I feel like they kind of all notice that it's time for them to kind of grow into their own selves and own careers a lot more. And for the YBN collective specifically, it was definitely in Corday's best interest to separate himself from Namir and Almighty J, because let's face it, Corday has a lot more future potential than Namir and Almighty J do. But with that said, I'm really curious to see how these rap collectives and groups will continue to develop and change over time. Not just these three, but other groups we may see arise, or groups we might suddenly see start to separate from one another. But with that said, let me know your thoughts down below, and if you did enjoy this video, chances are you will like some of my other videos that I make. And make sure to subscribe and hit bell notifications so you do not miss out on any new videos that I post.
Back with your bitch. I got the last laugh and you pissed. The comments is up, I'm counting it up. How did I get rich? Smashing the bros, I know she gon' switch. I don't need a pole or a stick. I hop in that hole and you know I'm a dick. I start driving road cause I'm fire as shit. Somebody call the ambulance cause I got too much pain. I'm finna have a heart attack cause I just popped this in. Watch a nigga like a laundromat.